Hey everyone. Today I wanted to talk about this new movie that almost completely flew under my radar. Frenzy Moon is a brand new werewolf flick that just came out this month, written and directed by Gregory Lamberson, the same guy who made Slime City, which, if you're not familiar, is a hilarious B movie that came out way back in the 1980s. And apparently, this movie was partially funded through Kickstarter. Now, the setup is kind of like a ripoff of Evil Dead, but with werewolves instead of demons. There's this group of friends who are staying at a cabin in the middle of nowhere, but they run into this crazy guy with guns who tells them that there are werewolves out in the woods and they need to protect themselves. Of course, they don't believe him, but soon after, they all start getting picked off by werewolves and they need to try to survive the night in the cabin. So, right off the bat, I don't think it was that bad. It's not the best, but definitely not the worst. It's clearly low budget, so I do want to try and go easy on it. Now, that does not mean I'm going to excuse all of its flaws, but what I mean is, me and my friends have tried making short films ourselves, and we were terrible at it, so I kind of know what it's like to make a movie without a whole lot of money. And for what they had to work with, Frenzy Moon was pretty decent. The biggest thing that I want to talk about is the werewolf effects because, let me tell you, the special effects are the real stars of the movie, for better or worse. There's actually a lot of different practical effects that were used to create the werewolves. For the most part, they are these guys in costumes with animatronic faces. They sort of look like the costumes from Werewolf Cabal. If any of my viewers have seen that movie, that's what they look like. And some of the costumes are pretty good, but then some of them look really silly, and maybe that's supposed to be part of the appeal. There's these close-ups of the animatronic faces, and they've got these silly, googly eyes like Chuck E. Cheese robots, Five Nights at Freddy's type of shit. And the eyes are way too close together. Every time they showed close-ups of the eyes, I could not stop laughing at how silly they looked. And then some of the other close-ups look like they're just these hand puppets that are so stiff, it looks like a Muppet is just gnawing on people's hands. Sometimes they used miniatures, and they literally just look like action figures. But as fake as the special effects look, I do appreciate that the werewolves in the movie are practical effects, and not just CGI all throughout. I usually respect when werewolf movies go to that extra effort. Now, if there is one major problem that I had with the movie, it would be that the characters are extremely paper thin. They are completely devoid of any personality and not memorable at all. The only one who seemed to have any sort of character development was Alyssa Grace Adams, who plays the vegan girl. At first you think she's going to be this spoiled city girl who gets killed off immediately, but she surprisingly gets her own little character arc, but unfortunately there's not a whole lot to it. It really just amounts to her going from being very rude to very respectful, and that's it. And then you have Kayla Malika, who was not bad, but the problem is that she's not really a character. She's just playing the stereotypical angry black lady, and it's a shame because I actually thought that she was the most talented of all the actors. Look, I'm not saying that you're not allowed to write a character the way that you want to, and I personally wouldn't mind it if they at least made all of the other characters into silly stereotypes like a jock or a cheerleader, but all of the other characters are so devoid of any personality, I can't remember anything about them, and I literally just watched this movie last night. Then you have Aaron Krieger, and again, he's not a bad actor, but he's not given much to do besides firing a gun, and he's got these stupid lines of dialogue which are supposed to be edgy, but they just come off real cringeworthy. He mentions that his family was killed by werewolves, but he never really talks about them. It's just a throwaway line of dialogue. We don't even get to learn how it affected him, so it's hard to feel anything for the character. Everybody just seemed like they were really underdeveloped, but I guess you're not supposed to be watching for the characters, you're watching to see werewolves rip people to shreds. There were times where it's hard to tell if the acting is the problem or if it's the way that they're written. There's a part where one character witnesses her boyfriend get killed by a werewolf, and another character just turns to her and says, "Oh, I am so sorry." And it doesn't just happen once, it happens twice, and I laughed both times. Even though the characters are lousy, I thought some scenes were fun in a campy B-movie sort of way. There are plenty of chances to survive against the werewolves, but they don't because they're so stupid. Like, they just keep putting themselves in danger. It was honestly really funny how the movie kept playing with expectations. Like, there are plenty of moments where you think one thing is going to happen, but instead something else happens. When the movie starts, they repeatedly confuse you with who the main character is going to be. Like, they will introduce a character, and you'll start to think that they're going to be the main character, but then they immediately get killed off, so it kind of psychs you out. So I really appreciate that it messes with your expectations like that. There are quite a few suspenseful moments, especially one scene where a character gets attacked in an outhouse of all places. But I think another small issue that I had is that there are a couple of scenes that drag on for way longer than they needed to. The best example of this would be the scene with the werewolf test, where the group is trying to figure out which one of them is a werewolf. It seemed like it was meant to be a reference to John Carpenter's The Thing, with like the blood test scene, but it's just really long and tedious, and it really just amounts to constantly moving the goalpost. But if you're wondering how I can like this movie, it's because it really does seem like it's a tribute to old horror movies. The opening credits are ripped directly from Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, with the scrolling blue text with the camera flying over the water and the mountains. I mean, it is a perfect replica of the opening credits to The Shining, and I just thought it was such a neat reference. And if you're into blood and gore, there's plenty of that as well. My favorite is this one scene at the beginning where a character has their face bitten off by a werewolf and you see the bones. Like, the prosthetic makeup in that scene was pretty good. But also, let's talk about The Fog. This is one of the foggiest movies that I have ever seen. This has more fog than John Carpenter's The Fog. Not only that, but it's obviously just fog machines. And not to mention, they never seem to reload their guns, they just have an unlimited supply of ammo to kill all these werewolves. But seriously, the final shootout with all the werewolves was worth it. It was brutal. This almost reminds me of like an Ed Wood movie. That's what I like about it, is that it's made in the same style of like an old B monster movie. It reminds me a lot of the last movie I reviewed, which was the Toxic Avenger remake, and this is way more cheesy, but just like Toxic Avenger, I still appreciate that it actually tries to be entertaining despite its limited budget. I think that's what's most important, and I know that I say this all the time, but it seems like ever since the Sharknado movies, there's now this new wave of independent filmmakers who go out of their way to make bad movies on purpose. But Frenzy Moon truly was entertaining, and it's far better than watching another Camp Blood sequel. In conclusion, I know that it's a film sort of intended for a niche audience, and it does have a number of problems. But for a low-budget werewolf flick, it's really not that bad. Trust me, I have seen far, far worse. To me personally, the worst thing that a werewolf movie can be is boring, and this was not boring. I will definitely be watching it again in the near future, but the best rating that I can give it is a 6 out of 10. Obviously, it's not as good as The Howling, it's not as good as American Werewolf in London, and it's sure as hell not as good as Bad Moon. Bad Moon is my favorite werewolf movie for anyone curious. But you can tell that this was made for people who are fans of those movies, so if you happen to be one, I do recommend Frenzy Moon. Just make sure that you are aware of its shortcomings before going into it. And I'm also looking forward to that other movie that's coming out called Devour, because that looks like it's going to be real good, but it still doesn't have a release date yet from what I've seen, so we'll see what happens with that. Anyway, thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you all next time.